In the Australian outbacks, there is a beetle that keeps falling in love with empty beer bottles. Entomologists first documented this in the early 1980s, but the beetles had almost certainly been at it for as long as those beer bottles had been laying there. It's one particular brown bottle, dimpled at the base, glossy in the sun. To a male beetle, that particular combination reads as female. Not just any female, better than female. Bigger, shinier, more of every signal he was built to chase. So the males climb aboard the glass and wouldn't get off. They ignore the actual females walking past them in the dirt. Some even stay there until the sun cooks them or the ants find them, still reaching for the only mate that ever truly moves them anymore. You already know where this is going, and you already know it doesn't apply to you. You're not a beetle. You make real choices. You have taste, which is exactly what a beetle would say if it had a podcast, in between segments about what the females keep getting wrong. Now, run the same trick on a person instead of a beetle. Take someone from 1995, before any of this ever existed, and set them down in an ordinary 2026 coffee shop on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. They wouldn't see romance. They would see a horror film. A room full of young people, most of them lonely, most of them aching to be touched, and all of them staring down into a small glowing rectangle instead of at each other. The men absent-mindedly measuring themselves against a height that maybe 1 in 20 men are born with. The women measuring themselves against bodies that rarely exist outside of angles and filters and 100 discarded takes. Nobody speaking, nobody risking anything, and everyone rating themselves and being rated by a machine that none of us can see. To us, that is a regular Tuesday, but to that person from 1995, that looks like the opening scene of a movie that ends very badly. And the cruelest part is that none of this comes from scarcity. We have more access to other people than anyone who has ever existed before us. Thousands of people a thumb swipe apart, all sorted and lit and queued up like produce. You would think that would feel like abundance, but it feels like exhaustion. The more phases you scroll past, the less nerve you have to actually want one of them. And somewhere in there, you lose the ability to be moved by someone sitting across the table. We've built the largest dating market in human history, and yet people stand in the middle of it feeling lonelier than they were before they walked through the door. That's the puzzle. Not why is everyone so shallow. A better question is, why does so much access produce so little contact? Two bad answers. The internet already has its explanations ready, and both of them are half blind. The first one is the hard-eyed version. Attraction, it says, is old and hardwired and basically settled. Men are running an ancient program that hunts for youth and beauty, women for height and provision and status, and every single swipe is just that buried code executed out in the open. It says we invented the idea of romance just to make the process of choosing a partner feel less like a business transaction. Apps didn't corrupt anything. They just pull the curtain back and let us watch the machinery run. The second is the blank slate version, sprinting in the exact opposite direction. It says that the whole checklist is a myth, a bad inheritance of evolutionary psychology. Look at the actual research, this camp argues, and what people swear that they want barely predicts who they actually fall for once a real human is in the room. The relationship scientist Paul Eastwick has spent years showing that the famous sex differences, men chasing looks, women chasing resources, largely dissolves the moment you measure attraction, real attraction, instead of stated wish lists. So attraction was never ancient code. It's malleable and improvised and half invented in the space between two specific people. And we've simply been talked into believing that we are prisoners of a template that never quite existed. There's a splinter of truth in each. The ancient program is real. You can feel it fire in the first half second of noticing someone. And attraction really can be improvised. Every one of us can name that person who felt more attractive as they became more known. But here's the sleight of hand your eye keeps missing. These two camps seem like mortal enemies. One side telling you that you're a robot running buried code, the other side telling you that you are free. But quietly, both camps are shaking hands under the table. Both are trying to settle once and for all what human nature simply is, as though you could find the answer sealed inside a person and nowhere else. And that is the shared blind spot, because you can watch the answer flip simply by changing the room. Put someone behind a screen, judged by a single photo, and the hard eyed camp is right about them every single time. Give the same person a season of ordinary afternoons across a real table, and the other camp is right about them instead. Same person, different rooms. You can't lock someone in a room filled with candy, watch them eat it like a child, and conclude that that is simply how humans dine. No, that says just as much about the room. And for better or worse, we're all constantly moving between both rooms. The part of you that decides at the door. To see what the room is doing, you have to notice that attraction isn't just one thing. It's at least two different circuits, and they work at completely different speeds. The first one is the bouncer. Call it the sorting circuit. It's fast, visual, comparative, and it doesn't care about your inner life. It doesn't know that you are secretly thoughtful once people get past the first 30 seconds. It notices symmetry, youth, height, status, confidence, the whole checklist of things people swear they don't have until the moment they have to decide who to text back. This circuit is old and efficient, and it is not evil. Pretending it doesn't exist is sentimentality, it's not depth. But there's a second circuit, a slower one. Call it the bonding circuit. It notices how a person's presence lands over time. Their timing, their smell, which your body reads far more of than you would ever admit to, the particular way they laugh a half second late, the way your shoulders drop the moment they walk in, how someone who wasn't your type spends 20 minutes sitting across a table from you, and suddenly your type starts to edit itself around the person in front of you. That is not magic. That is the second circuit coming online. The one that needs time and proximity and a body in the room for it to work at all. Which means both sides were staring at something real and calling it the whole. The hardliners saw the bouncer, fast and unsentimental, and decided that that was the sum of human desire. The cultural camp saw the slow circuit, the one that rewrites itself around a particular person, and decided that that was the truth instead. Each is right about what it sees and wrong to think that it stands alone. What neither notices is that an environment can walk up and decide which of the two gets to speak. You can't delete the sorting circuit. It's too old and hardwired for that. But it can be constrained by the bonding circuit. The bouncer will try to reclaim that door. But given enough space, the slower, more deliberate circuit can quiet the sorting circuit. Now, here's the thing dating apps actually did. They did not digitize courtship. They amputated it. They kept the bouncer, but threw away the room. A profile can show you a face, a height, a job, and a bio written by someone trying to sound interesting without sounding desperate. which is a cursed little write-in assignment. What it cannot tell you is whether your nervous system settles when you sit down, whether the awkwardness turns into charm, and whether anything grows in the space between two people. So the app asks you one question over and over again: approve or reject. That is not attraction. That is attraction with most of its organs removed. You are being asked to make 100% of the decision with maybe 10% of the tools that evolution has handed you for it. The Cheeto Problem. Which brings us back to the Beatles and why smart people keep climbing onto the glass. Biologists have a name for what happens to these beetles: a supernormal stimulus. The ethologist Nico Tinbergen pinned it down decades ago. Hand-in nesting birds, giant plaster eggs, so absurdly oversized that the birds waddled off of their own real eggs to go sit on the fake one. The idea is simple and humbling. An animal evolves to respond to real signals, but then some exaggerated fake version of that signal hijacks the instinct and cranks it past anything that nature ever produced. The Beatles didn't invent a new desire. The bottle just impersonated an old one, louder. We do this to ourselves constantly, and food is the cleanest example. We didn't evolve to want Cheetos. We evolved to crave sugars and salts and fats back when these were rare and kept you alive. Then someone learned how to isolate them, intensify them, dye them orange, and seal them in a bag engineered to hit your brain harder than any plant or animal ever could. And then we act surprised that broccoli can't compete anymore. Dating apps ran the same play on attraction. We evolved to notice beauty, status, confidence, desirability. The algorithm took those signals, ranked them, filtered them, lit them, edited them, and poured them into a scroll with no bottom. So the problem was never that humans like beauty. The problem was that the machines invented the romantic equivalent of a Cheeto: hyper concentrated, instantly rewarding, and strangely empty. Sit in that long enough, and real humans start to feel undersalted. Not because they got worse, but because your appetite got trained on the fake. And it's worse than personal appetite because desire is contagious. We mostly don't figure what we want from scratch. We learn by watching what everyone else seems to want. The feed is a machine for showing us what is getting attention, which faces gets the most comments, which bodies get the most likes, which men are cast as winners, which women are cast as flawless. So the crowd points, the algorithm magnifies, and millions of people end up chasing after a tiny sliver of humanity. The top fraction of a percent is shown to you so often that the exception starts to feel like the floor. The rare becomes the baseline, and ordinary people start to look like they failed a test they never even agreed to take. Here's where this stops being some clever theory and starts being something that should actually scare us. None of this is quarantined at the extremes. The edge behaviors keep drifting inwards, and every year the baseline shuffles to meet them until the things that would have looked like symptoms a year ago start to read as just how dating works. Watch what this does to two ordinary people who would have been fine in any other century. What it does to men. Watch what this does to a specific guy. Call him the one standing near the espresso machine, deciding whether to say anything. He isn't comparing himself to the room anymore. He's comparing himself to a composite. The tall guy, the rich guy, the jacked guy, the guy who's effortlessly dominant, all stitched together out of 10,000 fragments of other men's highlight reels into a ghost that no single human being actually is. Against that ghost, he doesn't feel like a person anymore. He feels like a product that didn't clear the minimum viable spec. And the ghost isn't only about some superficial qualities, there is a deeper wound underneath. For most of human history, a man's desirability was tied to his usefulness, his ability to provide and protect, build, and become necessary in a visible way. Now, women are more educated, more independent, less materially dependent on men than ever before, which is genuine progress. And it also leaves a lot of men standing in a very strange doorway. They're told they're no longer needed, while still being expected to be exceptional, not decent, not kind, not present, exceptional. So when they hear the 80-20 rule, the idea that 80% of women are chasing after the top 20% of men, even if that math is cartoonish, it lands emotionally because it puts into words a humiliation they already carried. That ordinary men have quietly lost their place at the table. And when female caution gets amplified online into a general suspicion about men, a lot of them don't hear a safety conversation. They hear an accusation. Not needed, not wanted, and now vaguely dangerous for wanton connection at all. From there, men tend to break one of two ways. Some optimize. That's where looks maxing comes from. And at the mild end of the extreme, there's nothing wrong with it. Lift, groom, sleep, and dress like you appreciate the power of being presentable. That is just hygiene of the soul. But there's a cliff, and you can watch teenagers walking straight off of it. Boys ranking themselves on some obscure online attractiveness scales, fixating on the exact tilt of their eyes, and on the far end, bone smashing, literally smashing their facial bones with objects in the hopes of provoking some denser growth towards some mathematically optimal jaw. When a kid has started treating his own skull as a defect to be corrected with a hammer, he has stopped trying to improve himself and started prosecuting himself. The tragedy isn't that he wants to feel or be attractive. The tragedy is that he has started to see his own face as a rejected application, turned down before he has even said a word. The majority of others just leave, not with a manifesto. Usually there's no villain speech or forum post or ideology. They simply just stop trying and disappear into the work and the games and the porn and the low background hum of it's rigged anyways. The optimizer and the ghost in the basement look like exact opposites. One grinding to play the game, the other refusing to play it at all. But they are both nursing the same bruise. The suspicion that ordinary maleness is not enough to be seen. That if you're not exceptional, you are invisible. And that plain wanton is embarrassing if you do not have extraordinary proof of value stapled to it. What it does to women. Now, the woman sitting at the other table, the one who has all the option and is somehow exhausted by all of them, she's getting hit from two different directions. The first one is comparison. She isn't comparing herself to the woman at her school or the woman at her gym anymore. She's comparing herself to a global feed of optimized femininity. The faces edited into symmetry, the bodies shaped by surgery and posing and lighting and money, and sometimes starvation dressed up as wellness. She can be genuinely attractive in the actual world and still feel defective. the second she opens an app, because the comparison pool has stopped being human sized. Her youth becomes a countdown. Her face becomes a draft pick. And dismissing this as vanity misses the point entirely. The deeper injury isn't wanting to be pretty. It's living under the sense that your image is permanently under review, appraised and ranked and archived by an audience you never agreed to perform for. The second direction is fear. Women aren't just fed beauty, they're fed story after story about the worst than a guy ever did. The predator, the stalker, the ex who turned violent, the dates that curdled, the guy who was normal right up until he wasn't. And female fear isn't imaginary. Women have real reasons to be careful. And any take that skips past that isn't brave. It's moralizing from the cheap seats. But a real warning system can still be jammed on. Feed anyone the most disturbing 5% of a group as an emotional weather system, and members of that group start to feel threatening even before they've done anything at all. That's what the man or the bear thing actually exposed. The most interesting thing about that was not the risk statistics. It was what it revealed underneath. That for a lot of women, male danger had come to feel so familiar, so plausible, and so tiring that even a bear felt like the less complicated animal. That's real. It's also not the whole story about men. It's what happens when genuine caution gets run through an inflation machine. Put the two together and it's a brutal squeeze. One channel whispers that she's not beautiful enough to be loved. The other whispers that even if she is loved, she may not be safe, which is why the constant attention never actually fixes the loneliness. Matches aren't trust. Being wanted doesn't mean being known. 100 men wanting her doesn't add up to a single man who she can exhale around. The app follows you into the room. So both people arrive to the coffee shop feeling already injured. He is carrying the ghost of the optimized man. She is carrying the archive of a dangerous one. And the cruelest trick of the whole system is that you don't get to leave it behind just because you're offline. Feed rides in with you. You meet a real, specific, limited human being, and some background process is already comparing them to the gallery, already asking yourself, could I do better? Already scanning for threats, already impatient because this person is unfolding slowly. And the machine trained you to expect fireworks by minute 2. A normal man isn't competing against the men in the room. He's competing against a fantasy of men. A normal woman isn't being met as herself. She's being cross-referenced against an endless catalog. And both of them are being asked to beat a ghost. And ghosts don't lose because they were never real enough to have flaws. This is what hollows out the middle. Most people never go to the extremes. Most men aren't incels. Most women don't hate men. And almost nobody is getting jaw surgeries. But the extremes bend the whole emotional economy around them. And in the middle sits millions of people who are attractive enough, interesting enough, kind enough, flawed enough, human enough, and who have quietly lost the ability to feel like enough. They didn't disappear. Perception did. Attraction used to be allowed to grow through proximity and repetition and the strange chemistry of ordinary moments piling up. But the feed rewards instant certainty. And most people don't arrive certain. Most people unfold. And the algorithm hates unfolding because unfolding is slow and it doesn't keep you scrolling. No going back, no pretending. None of this is nostalgia. The old world had its own cage. People got stuck in bad marriages, women had fewer exits, men were locked in even more rigid roles than today. And a lot of what we call arranged marriages was just scarcity wearing a nice coat. The point isn't that the past was healthy, it's that every dating world has its own signature failure. The old world trapped you with too few options. The new one paralyzes you with the wrong kind. Endless options, but no actual people. It's abundance with no contact. And comparison is the real intimacy killer. It eats away at your gratitude and your ability to be present. Always whispering that someone hotter or easier is just one swipe away. Someone who will never let you down, mostly because they aren't actually real yet. Which is why just delete the app is true and nowhere near enough. Deleting it helps, but if the machine already trained your eyes, it already followed you out the door. You're still going to reject people for not producing fireworks on contact. You'll still read normal awkwardness as incompatibility, still mistake calm for boredom, and still mistake plain fear for wisdom. So the real work isn't logging off, it is repairing perception. Let attraction take its time instead of demanding it performs on cue. Care about beauty without worshiping its counterfeit. Take danger seriously, take real danger seriously, without letting fear be your whole theory about half the human race. And hardest of all, let yourself be ordinary without hearing that as a verdict. Because love was never built between ideals, it gets built between the limited, specific, slightly strange people who slowly become irreplaceable to each other. And that needs the exact thing the machines can't manufacture: the time, the repetition, the body in the room, and the nerve to be seen before you're polished. The beetle died on the bottle because the fake was louder than the real, and it never got the chance to notice the plain brown female walking past in the dirt. You still can. The person sitting across the table isn't an avatar, and you don't have to become one in order to deserve them. So walk in with a better question than the one the feed keeps asking. Not, do they beat the algorithm? The quieter one that it can't monetize. What becomes possible if I meet them outside of it?